just to show that digital isn't completely online, digital doesn't just equate with the internet, I was going to talk about, well, a project we did last year called Hack Shack, which has led into extending that project to a project that doesn't actually have a name. We're working with Fab Lab, so we just call it the Fab Lab project. But what that is really around the possibilities that digital's opened up for us all, to do things for ourselves, to network, to share, and to not rely on the big medical companies or the powers that be to be able to provide solutions for us. So with Hack Shack, what we did was we've got a tinkerer in residence called Stu Charles, some of you probably know him, and we had him and a creative technologist and an inventor and somebody else, there was 4 of them. And what we did was put out a proposal to, wasn't just disabled people actually, but it turned out that they were all disability issues, to say, have you got one of those situations where design just hasn't met your needs, it's just not thought of you, and there's something that could do with fixing and so on. And we finished up where we got the entries, and the people who came along to get their ideas sort of worked on came along. We spent the whole weekend with the technologists and the disabled people working together at looking at different solutions for their problems. The technologists then went away and built what turned out to be, one of them was a stand for a video camera or even a camera for a wheelchair user. Because obviously once you've got a camera in your hand and you're a wheelchair user, that's it, you're stuck, you can't move. Where actually once you've got a stand, you actually become a human dollar. And the other one was for a camera awaiting for a shutter release for a guy who had one arm, but he wanted to be able to focus his SLR and at the same time use shutter release and so on. So they did that. That sort of sparked off a lot of ideas, solutions that we then came back and worked with the people to test them. Then a few minor amendments made, and then that was opened up on wikis and open source so that it can be developed further. And I think that's one of the great things about digital, social media and so on. It's the sharing, it's the way that this thing's open source so different people can take things onwards. So I think this year Fab Lab approached us and wanted to do a similar project. Fab Labs are they're based around the world. And they're spaces and places where they've got fantastic equipment, from 3D printers to laser cutters to Raspberry Pis to all the sort of digital stuff and soldering and you name it, they've got it. But this time what we did, instead of already getting people who were already sort of inventors or technologists, we invited people to come along, and actually we spent a day working with them, and we called those people the ambassadors. But what they were doing was finding out what Fab Lab would do, how they could use its different facilities. So with people were said, we had 2 hours in which to design egg cups, and in fact we had one that was an overing egg cup. We had all sorts of things. Now, those ambassadors will then come back to build on the ideas we put out for ideas again, for things that people might want to solve. So some examples are the Fab Lab in India, and all the Fab Labs, they started off from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And anything any Fab Lab does can then be replicated around the world and quite easily and cheaply, and it's all open source. So Fab Lab in India, for instance, has made hearing aids that cost 20p, so that hearing aids are available and easy to use. So they do work very much on the principle of that it's cheap, it's easily replicable and so on. Like everything, not all projects go as well as you want them to do, and we didn't get quite as many ideas in as we hoped. So we've started we work from this IDEO which has this really good sort of booklet called Human-Centered Design, and it takes you through the whole process of actually working with people and making sure you get their ideas. Because what often happens, and a lot of disabled and deaf people will know this, is people say they're consulting you, but they're not actually consulting you. They've got their ideas and, you know, already fixed and so on. So we work very much on those principles. And the other one, which I have to try and remember if any of you are interested, and this we work to is Inclusive Solutions. They're based in Nottingham, and they've got the Facilitator's Handbook. It's a practical guide to leading person-centred planning processes, and that's very much used in within a disability context. But so what we're doing now is workshops with disabled people themselves about them coming up with ideas. So we've just started those and are doing some more, and even doing sort of daft ideas with them as well. I loved the talking tea bag. Somebody wanted a talking tea bag. I had visions of this tea bag sort of saying, "No, you've had enough, you've had enough, you've had bad stuff." So that's a project we're doing that's sort of physical. I mean, there's even things like now they're doing the 3D printing of prosthetic limbs. What we like to do, what we're very centred in as an organisation, is actually working with people rather than just doing things and sort of putting it out there. So the other project we're doing, because a lot of people were talking about access to the web and so on, but when you actually look at it, if you look at the use of the web, particularly amongst disabled people, and actually on Greater Manchester Radio this morning, they were talking about like 50% of people aged 65 and over don't use the internet, have never used the internet. Well, from the work we've been doing with people, that isn't just because it's not accessible, although that is a problem in itself, without a doubt, in terms of, you know, whether things have got a audio description, whether they're suitable for people who might have dexterity issues, or whether they've got subtitles and so on and so forth. It's not just that. I mean, we did a social media cafe with the Wigan people first, and it was interesting that I think out of, it was either 8 or 10, there was only about, I think, 3 of them that had been online. 2 used Facebook, but didn't put photos up, didn't know how to put photos up. The rest would all wanted to use it, but no one had ever sat down with them and actually worked with them about how they would use it. So there was a fear factor there. So, you know, I think a lot of it is around that, about people just not actually knowing. Of course, it's the financial issues and so on. But as Alison said, it's a really big issue. I mean, when universal credit comes in April, you're only going to be able to access that online. So it is a real big access issue about getting people actually online. So with that in mind, we're doing, it was a digital project, but we didn't want to make it just digital. It's called Pride of Place, and what we're doing is, it's a digital mapping project. What we're doing is attaching people's stories to maps. And what we wanted to do was, there's so many negative comments, and there's so much sort of, just the way that the press, and particularly over the last couple of years, has portrayed disabled people, unemployed people, and so on. So, you know, if you're unemployed, you're a lazy, you're a shirker, you know, like George Osborne saying at the weekend, you know, do the right thing, and so on. So, I don't know what we have to do the right thing. But, and also there's actually there's places in Britain that are sort of stereotyped and given that sort of bad image, when actually there are really good communities in some of those places. So we're going around Greater Manchester, and what we want to do is not just the digital, although it will take place online as well, and people will just be able to contribute and put their stories up online. And we use sort of transmedia or cross-media techniques. We're actually starting, for good reason, in Harper A, because I don't know if any of you have seen all the kerfuffle about the BBC doing the, what was it called, People Like Us, yeah, and then the comments from the actual community. And so we're going to go up there. There's a place called the Factory Youth Zone, and it's absolutely brilliant, brand new facility that when we went up there, it's just being used by loads of people. It's got everything. It's got radio stations, climbing walls, everything. We're also planning to go in the fire of Asda and out on our Prey Market, because we want to be where people who might not go to events or different things are just passing on the street. So although we're targeting certain people, we also just want to be out on the street. And people will then be able to do non-digital if they wish, or it may be short films and so on, and attach those stories to the map that will then all go up online. And of course, our part in the planning of that is to make sure that every piece of film that does has an audio description and subtitling and so on. So it comes back to the planning of how you do it. If you use digital, if you're showing people who don't perhaps, rather than just saying, oh, here it is, we'll give you a lesson on how to use the internet or whatever, and you do it in that way, people aren't really seeing the benefit. But I think being able to sort of give people a voice and show them that actually you can use the internet in these creative ways and you have your voice. I think it's something Alison and Samantha was saying earlier, that actually now at least we've got a voice through the internet, and being able to, I hate the word empower, but to show people the power of that they could use at the moment, and just to show that not necessarily if somebody's disabled does it mean to say they're going to be right on about all access issues. I think working with people and a range of people and users and the usability testing and so on is so important, rather than just expecting that, oh well, I don't know, we'll wheel in a wheelchair user and they'll know all about accessibility and we'll get everything right.
Technology, eh?